Hey YouTube, this is going to be an update, excuse me, on the Whitney Mills case. For those, most of you know, if you're watching this channel, Whitney Mills was an OT8 Scientologist living in Clearwater, and she unalived herself. Suffered from mental health issues, very similar to Lisa McPherson. And so after she passed away in 2022, Whitney Mills' estate has now brought a lawsuit versus the Scientologist Dr. Minkoff in Scientology. Hey, welcome in. This is the same doctor that also treated Lisa McPherson. And so I have some, but the answer hasn't been filed yet. Hey, Laura FM, great to see you. Yeah, so just covering the Whitney Mills lawsuit here, and I have some exhibits from the case. So we're gonna just kind of go through this, and for probably most people, it's just gonna, they'll see the replay, and that's cool too. So this is these exhibits are just for Dr. Minkoff, and yeah, this is a really troubling case, and if it doesn't bother you, there's probably, something wrong with you. This is really upsetting. This is how in law school a negligence case is taught. Hey, Robert, welcome in. Hey, Bunny. So this is the case, the Whitney Mills lawsuit versus Dr. Minkoff in Scientology. And so this part of the case is the medical malpractice versus Minkoff. And with a negligence case, you've got four elements that a plaintiff has to show. One, there's a duty. Two, there's a breach of that duty. Apologize for my handwriting. Number three is proximate cause. And I'm just going to quickly go through this so you understand the exhibits a little bit better than damages. Now, damages you would think would be pretty obvious because Whitney Mills was this very otherwise healthy-looking young woman, only 37, and she had this horrible thing happen to her. She needed help. She cried for help, and Scientology once again ended up causing someone to have the worst possible outcome. So damages you would think would be pretty obvious. These exhibits won't even go into damages, but she was only 37. She should have had another 50 years to live. In the end, there may be some question about the dollar value of the damages. It's not really something I do. A duty, though, in this case, Dr. Minkoff treated Whitney Mills, so there's a doctor-patient relationship, so there's a duty there. There's a duty of care, whereas, an innocent bystander wouldn't have a duty, even though maybe something bad happens. So there isn't going to be much for Scientology or Minkoff to talk about on that one. In the Scientology part of this case, Scientology appears to have sent 3 helpers to stay with Whitney Mills and help her not have this bad outcome. She shared her feelings, also considering that suicide, so I think because Scientology had sent over some people to her home, they're not going to be able to argue there was no duty there, but it's Scientology, so they probably will argue that. The main thing here is the breach. So if you have a duty, in this case, a doctor-patient relationship, the duty then is to act as a reasonable doctor in the same or similar situation. So even if you have a patient who passes away, if you do everything that the community of doctors would do, then you wouldn't have any liability. So you're going to see how Dr. Minkoff screwed up here, and it's really troubling. And then proximate cause. So if you screw up, what's the foreseeable end? What's going to happen if you screw up? So if I drink 32 beers and go out and drive my car. The foreseeable problem is going to be that I run someone over or I have a collision. But sometimes, just because you're screwing up, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily causing the damages that happen. So like, the way this is taught in law schools, Mrs. O'Leary in the 1800s goes to her barn with a candle and she's going to milk the cows, but a cow knocks over the candle. So what do you think could happen? Well, maybe the barn will burn down or, something like that. But the whole city of Chicago burned down. So that's a little bit beyond what you think the possibilities are if you screw up. So these are the kinds of things that that these medical experts are going to be talking about in Whitney Mills' case. So these are three. This was filed by Whitney Mills' estate. We're still waiting for an answer from Scientology, and also from Minkoff. So it looks like there's some communications between the parties, which is good. So you might get a settlement. This is going to be super expensive. So if they can just have a good settlement and not have to argue in court, then that would be terrific. We'll see what happens. In this case, though, there's three. Whitney Mills estate has three medical experts. And so I'm just going to go through the affidavits. But basically right now we're just waiting for an answer to the amended complaint. Whitney Mills estate filed a case against Scientology and then amended their complaint to add Dr. Minkoff. So these three affidavits are in support of the complaint versus Minkoff. And so keep in mind that in order to win, Whitney Mills has to show that these folks had a duty. Minkoff had a duty. Of course he did, because they had a doctor-patient relationship. So this is about the breach. In other words, Minkoff had to act the same way a reasonable doctor would in this situation. So this is one doctor here. This Dr. Berg. He has specific training with Lyme disease. So Whitney Mills came in to his office. He was treating her. She complained about, mental health issues. I mean, any one of us could see that was a real problem, and you would recommend, someone to help her with that. But he diagnosed her with Lyme disease, which is just unbelievable. And then he didn't even follow up on that. So this doctor is showing, number one, that he's in that community of doctors because he has experience treating Lyme disease. And he's never been disqualified as a medical witness, as an expert. These are all the records that this expert was able to see. So this is Minkoff's medical practice. There's some text messages also. I put a few of those on my community page. Those are actually in the pleadings. That's kind of unusual, but they're very troubling. Whitney Mills is asking for help, and Dr. Minkoff is talking about tone 40 and a bunch of bullshit. It's just shocking that a doctor would do that. And I'm glad there's some former Scientologists here who maybe help explain why they might go into that. So that's... all right, so let's go into what he says. All right, and there's also a request for some discovery, which is unusual at this stage of the case, because normally you have to wait till at least an answer is filed. So they're asking for more records from Minkoff and anyone else who's related. There's a nurse as well. So these are the three experts that you're going to see. This Dr. Berg, Dr. Bourdreau, and then this Bill Geis, who's a psychologist. Okay. So, yeah, that's Stoney. That's right. After asking for help on many occasions, she attempted to set herself on fire, and then, I mean, if that wasn't tragic enough, it appears someone helped her obtain the firearm. And the Clearwater police, of course, aren't really investigating it. But that, that's a huge problem, and it's very sad. This was totally avoidable. Okay. So Minkoff had been seeing Whitney Mills as a patient since 2015. So there's this doctor-patient duty, right? There's a duty of care now. And it appears there was this cyst. He appears to have told her that it was cancerous, but the experts say no. She returned to fill out. Now, so Minkoff gives Whitney Mills this questionnaire on a scale 0 to 4. That just the 0 to 4 scale is kind of bizarre. Describe your depression, and so she describes her depression as on a score of 5, so more than the 0 to 4 scale. So she is saying that she is depressed, she has anxiety, mood swings, irritability at the highest possible level. And then here's one of the text messages that went, this exchange between Minkoff and Whitney Mills. So Whitney Mills is asking for help. She's asking for help for the mental part. She says she's experiencing mental illness. And Minkoff responds, got it. Drugs could numb you, but you are OT. Put TRO in. It's a sensation. It's noise. It has no power over you. It's the truth. Eye of the tiger. You can be tone 40. You have friends in LRH. This is the doctor. This isn't some doofus on the street. She's going to a medical doctor for help. And this Scientology doctor, this Dr. Minkoff, is talking about tone 40 and LRH. It's just unbelievable. And so then after that, Whitney Mills asked Minkoff again, okay, is there anything else for the mental problems? Can you help me with that, Minkoff? And this is even worse. You thought that was terrible. She's really struggling with the mental part. This is the hardest part, acting insane when I'm not. And Minkoff doesn't even reply. She's suicidal and the doctor ignores her. So Minkoff is just saying, well, she's got Lyme disease. So this medical expert is saying, despite his diagnosis of Lyme disease, he didn't even treat it. If you think she had that, then you didn't even treat it. So he's falling he's falling below the standard of care, and that's how he's screwing up here. He didn't prescribe antibiotics, which would be apparently normal for Lyme disease. He diagnosed Whitney Mills with babesia. I don't even know what that is, but apparently it's caused by the same source that Lyme disease would be caused by. And he didn't perform the spinal tap. And then he diagnosed Whitney Mills with a cancerous cyst. So, on top of having, some really serious mental health issues, she thinks her body is dying. Turns out Minkoff was wrong. Sorry, but I don't know the best way to show all this, so hopefully you all can see this printout. These references to Bates numbers, these are, you'll see all these reports go like page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so there's like 3 of them in there, plus there's some other page numbers. So you put them all in a binder, and then the entire binder gets a new set of numbers, so you can refer to some page in a binder by a Bates number. That's what that is a reference to. So Dr. Minkoff fell below the standard of care because there was no evidence in records. He took a biopsy of this cyst to diagnose it as cancer. And then it was later proved that it wasn't even cancerous. So he took a patient with mental health issues and told her she had cancer. Yeah, I can't believe Minkoff is still practicing. And this is after having a hand in killing Lisa McPherson. That's just unbelievable that I couldn't even believe it when I saw it was the same doctor. I mean, it wasn't super shocking that Scientology's practices would result in more deaths, but the same doctor, it's just unbelievable. So he fell below the standard of care because he misdiagnosed Whitney Mills when he should have filed a process eliminating different kinds of diseases. And it's clear, I mean, even to us, right, even to lay people, he should have included the potential that Whitney Mills was suffering from a mental health crisis and a mental health disorder. He didn't do that, and the failure to do that resulted in the death of Whitney Mills by a suicide. And it could have been prevented with appropriate care. She's asking for mental health help, and he ignored her. On top of that, he misdiagnosed her as having cancer, so he threw gas on the fire, so to speak. So that's our first expert. And then we'll go to the second one. So this is Michelle Boudreau, and she has specific training in Lyme disease. She has also training in alternative medicine. So, you know, there may be, in some cases, perhaps some merit to pursuing alternative medicine, you know, to do something a little bit different, but this wasn't one of those cases probably. But these are experts who work with these alternative methods, but also have expertise in dealing with Lyme disease. Okay, so we received these same medical records, and trying to flip the page here. I got the monitor in front of me. And then, you know, this includes these text messages, which again are part of the pleadings, the complaint. If you want to look at the complaint, I put a couple of the text messages on my community page, but there are more that I didn't put on, and I think it looks like there's a whole bunch that we haven't seen yet. We're just getting a few of them. So Minkoff, again, was seeing Whitney Mills as a patient, so you have a duty of care to the patient at that point. Hi, Amy, welcome in. So there's this duty of care. So, and again, here's there's some Bates numbers, just references to a larger set of documents where you put page numbers, you know, throughout the whole book. So, you know, so there's a duty of care. Whitney Mills begins complaining that she has anxiety, trouble sleeping, loss of appetite. She fills out the questionnaire provided by Minkoff, where she rated on a scale of 0 to 4 that her depression, anxiety, mood swings, and irritability were a score of 5. So she's saying this is as bad as it could possibly be. And so you might think that, well, maybe she needs to see someone for help with that. She says, is there anything else for the mental part? This is my biggest symptom, the mental part. And then, you know, here we have this text again, which is just horrible. Minkoff responds, got it. Drugs can numb you, but your OT, put your TRO in. It's a sensation, it's noise. It has no power over you. Just unbelievable. So that's how he's falling below the standard of care, which he owes his duty of care to Whitney Mills because she's the patient. He's a doctor. Okay. I'm really struggling with the mental problems. This is the hardest part. And then Minkoff, again, you know, doesn't respond at all. So this doctor has reviewed the records from LifeWorks, that's Minkoff's medical practice. It became clear he began treating Whitney Mills for Lyme disease. Lyme disease, you know, and this expert begins to discuss how Lyme disease happens and what the symptoms are. Despite his diagnosis of Lyme disease, he did not prescribe it by antibiotics. That's what the last expert said also. So that's how he's screwing up, right? He's falling below the standard of care. The standard of care is whatever regular doctors would, a reasonable doctor in this situation. So you've got two doctors here saying, this is how I would treat it. This is what you do. And he didn't do it. He also diagnosed her with babesia, a parasite transmitted by the same tick that causes Lyme disease, but this is less likely to affect the neurological system. Only a spinal tap would determine this, and he didn't do the spinal tap. So that's where he screwed up again. Okay. Sorry, I gotta flip this page. Okay. So based on this, this doctor reviewing all the records from Whitney Mills' file, and based on her training, her education, her experience, it's her professional opinion, that Minkoff and the nursing staff, and so there's this nurse being included too, this Sue Morgan, and then LifeWorks, which is, again, the medical practice, they deviated from the prevailing professional standard of care by improperly diagnosing her with Lyme disease without any medical evidence. It's not that you made a mistake, it's just you didn't have any evidence to make that call. Failing to refer her to a neurologist, failing to conduct an appropriate workup to arrive at a different diagnosis, or differential diagnosis, and failing to refer her to a psychiatrist. That's the biggest one, probably. I mean, if someone's talking about having mental health issues and scoring herself on a 5 on a scale 0 to 4, like she's telling you she's got mental health problems. It's her medical opinion, more likely than not, Whitney Mills did not have Lyme disease, and he didn't perform the necessary tests to have evidence to confirm a diagnosis of this Lyme disease. Now, I put the case number in the description for this video, so if any of you want to, you can go to the Pinellas County Circuit Court. Their website is Florida, and I put that case number, and you can get all the documents just like I did if you want to follow along also. And then the test that Minkoff did order, a brain MRI, apparently there's with contrast, without contrast, came back normal, so it can't support a diagnosis of Lyme disease. That's where you have to just rely on the expert. Dr. Minkoff should have ordered the MRI in a different way. Apparently a medical doctor would know, but that's why we have these medical experts. This is, you've got two experts now saying the same thing. Whitney Mills did not present with this elevated white blood cell count or any signs of meningitis, which would be indicative of active Lyme infection in the brain. So there was no symptoms that would support this determination that she had Lyme disease. Yeah, stony baloney, you don't have to have a medical expert. You don't have to be having a medical background to appreciate how bad this is. It's awful. It's just awful. Just a layperson would see that she had a real need for at least mental health care. And then Minkoff even ignored her when she asked for help. And he didn't even respond to some of his text messages. Minkoff should have referred Whitney Mills to a neurologist, and his failure to do so fell below the standard of care. He also fell below the standard of care by not doing an appropriate workup, which involves creating a list of suspected diseases that includes common and uncommon diseases. So this is very similar to what the last expert said, but that's apparently what you would do in this area with this type of situation. And then again, here's where all of us lay people can really appreciate how bad Minkoff is. Just a rotten guy, not a good doctor, but I mean, on top of that, just a rotten guy. Whitney Mills scored herself very high ratings, right? She said 5 on a scale 0 to 4 and asked for mental health help. Text messages between Minkoff and Whitney Mills also memorialize further conversation indicative of a patient who is suffering from a mental health condition. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens here. I mean, of all the ways too to it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to even understand how it could happen. So it's a direct and proximate cause. So it's foreseeable, right? that if someone's saying they have mental health issues on a scale of a scoring of 5 on a scale of 0 to 4, that if you screw up and you don't even send her to a mental health professional, it is foreseeable this person could end up unalived. So this seems a little bit conclusory, but this is a medical expert, so it's not a fact expert, it's a fact witness, it's an expert. So I guess that's why she can use a legal term like proximate cause, but that's, that's foreseeable, that if you have someone with serious mental health issues and you don't get that person care, that they are going to have, the risk of maybe harming themselves. So that's the end of that declaration. Yeah. So we looked at some of the discipline that Minkoff had in the past, where he was suspended in Florida, which got him suspended in California, and he had to spend some money on some more education, and apparently he did that, and then he's allowed to practice again, and now he's returned to kill another woman. Amy, it's shocking. It's just absolutely shocking. I mean, California technically revoked his license, but then they held it aside, and if he was a good guy for 5 years, he did get in trouble and paid some money and took some classes, then he was going to be okay. So that's what he did. That's what happened, and that's why he was allowed to harm more people. And we know of 2, but I don't know how many others there could be. So this gentleman here is a little bit different. He's not a medical doctor so much as he's a psychologist. And this really struck me here. He's the director of behavioral health research at University of Missouri, Kansas City. He's been a clinical professor of psychiatry. He's trained over 10,000 clinicians. So this guy is like psychiatry. I mean, this is like this, what he says, what his experience is, like this is like the whole current state of psychiatry. Like this guy is like the one who taught everyone, right? So he knows what a reasonable person would do in these circumstances. And you can see all of these experts are licensed in many states. So these folks, they offer opinions probably in many cases. So when they say they haven't been disqualified, like that's actually saying something. But when this guy's taught 10,000 people at this School of Medicine of Psychiatry, that's saying a lot. So again, he's never been disqualified as an expert. He's never had any opinions disqualified. And so he received all these medical records that the other experts received. So we're not getting to see most of these records, but the text messages we do see, because for some reason the attorney put some of the text messages in the pleadings, so in the complaint. I posted just a few of them to the community page, but there are more than what I posted. But it's just so troubling. I couldn't believe that. I mean, I first caught my eye just to see text messages in the complaint, because they haven't been admitted to evidence yet. Normally the court will warn you. The court doesn't like that, because you can't just put evidence in your pleadings and then think like that's been admitted into the record. So the court will usually warn you, but maybe that's something that happens in med mal cases in Florida. I'm not sure, or maybe he's just trying to get Minkoff's insurance company to surrender quickly. Okay, and then so again, you have the same facts that we've seen. Minkoff is trained in infectious diseases, holds himself as an expert in Lyme disease. I guess to a doctor with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Lyme disease and cancer, he's calling himself an expert in Lyme disease and cancer, and that's what he told Whitney Mills, that she has cancer, and she didn't, as the autopsy showed. And he was treating her for Lyme disease when she really had mental health problems. So Minkoff had been seeing Whitney Mills as a patient since 2015. He was acting as her primary care physician. And so she had this cyst, which I imagine would be very troubling for her alone, but then he tells her it's cancerous, which was proven not to be. So Whitney Mills began complaining that she had anxiety, trouble sleeping, and loss of appetite. She returned and filled out this questionnaire provided by Minkoff. She rated on a scale 0 to 4, and that, I guess the tone scale will start off with 0 to 4, if I'm not mistaken, and then they expanded it. I'm not positive on that, but I wonder if that's where it came from. And she describes it as a score of 5, right? Her depression, a score of 5. Yeah, if anyone wants to send me a message, thanks, Sophia, manning8channel@gmail.com. Hopefully that shows up on the channel, but if not, I apologize. manning8channel@gmail.com. Okay, so irritability, depression, anxiety, she scores it a 5 on a scale of 0 to 4. So all of us, every single one of us, not because we hate Scientology, but just this is just so obvious. She's saying she's super depressed and needs a lot of help. And instead of telling her, helping her get, making a referral for mental health, possibly it's because he's a Scientologist, he doesn't do that. He tells her she has cancer when she doesn't. I don't understand how that happens. And this is he didn't just graduate from medical school, right? I mean, he's been practicing for decades. Over the next several months, Whitney Mills would text Dr. Minkoff constantly begging for Minkoff to help her with mental illness. Is there anything else for the mental part? Minkoff responds, got it. Drugs could numb you, but you are OT. It's just unbelievable. You have friends in LRH, well, super, why not get her some mental health help? But I guess Scientology doesn't believe in that. Okay. Yeah. So that's your power. You can be tone 40. That's you as cause. I know you can. So this third expert is a psychologist, whereas the first two are doctors. And then if you mean Dr. Minkoff apparently specializes in Lyme disease and cancer. High power lies. It is horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. I don't understand how, after the appropriate authorities knew how bad he was with the way he treated Lisa McPherson, that he's still able to practice, and for so long, for so many years. It's mind-blowing. Honestly, it's mind-blowing. So he gives her, he prescribed low-dose lithium, and I've heard of this, that lithium can be used to treat mental health issues if someone's considering something like severe as this. So this shows that Minkoff was aware of the mental health problems, and he diagnosed and began treating her for Lyme disease when he obviously knew that there were some mental health problems. And then he diagnosed there was this cyst, which I think would be very tough for a patient to know about and to deal with. And then he diagnoses it as cancerous when it turns out it wasn't. So the cyst, here we go. So the cyst was later proven not to be cancerous. So, someone comes in with serious mental health issues and concerns, and then he misdiagnoses her as having cancer. I would think that might make things worse, but I want to be careful and say that I don't have any kind of medical training at all. So based on my review of the records, this is the psychologist, based on my training, education, and experience, it's his professional opinion. This is someone who has trained 10,000 clinicians, that Minkoff and the nursing staff, including but not limited to this Sue Morgan at LifeWorks, deviated from the prevailing professional standard of care in their treatment of Whitney Mills by failing to refer her to a psychiatrist or psychologist for mental health treatment and evaluation, failing to conduct an appropriate workup to arrive at a differential diagnosis, and failing to prescribe appropriately for a psychosis. Sorry, I have to change it, turn a page here. Okay. So then these are some standards that this Joint Commission have promulgated. The Joint Commission has established quality standards for mental health integration into healthcare settings, and especially in recent years, specific recommendations for the prevention of suicide. These national healthcare-based suicide prevention standards include a safe healthcare environment. Well, I guess that probably applied to anything. Using validated suicide screening tools, okay. Moving to validated assessment methods when indicated. Implementing safety planning and linkage to mental health services when indicated. Minkoff's clinic, LifeWorks, chose not to pursue the Joint Commission accreditation. So they're not going along with this. They also chose not to align themselves with these mental health standards. So Whitney Mills was treated by Minkoff in a doctor-patient relationship. So again, you've got a duty of care there. General suicide prevention, mental health, and healthcare ethics dictate that this doctor-patient relationship creates duties to diagnose and treat the patient, fair enough, meet the standards of care for physicians, act to protect the patient if self-harm or suicide risk is indicated, switch to alternative treatment or refer the patient to alternative services if the current treatment is not working and distress, illness are significant. Well, yeah, I should have made a referral, I would think, Philip, but I'm not an expert. I can only go off what this person's saying. And not abandon the patient. So we saw him do that. We saw him ignore Whitney Mills' text messages without linking the patient directly to alternative care. Okay, change the page. Okay. A review of his records indicates insufficient attention was paid to even the most elemental suicide prevention measures, assessing and documenting the presence of explicit risk factors, such as hopelessness, along with failing to create a viable safety plan, failing to provide adequate interventions to quell unbearable pain and mental torment. And that's what she really seemed to be complaining about. Just for months, she was sending these text messages, and they're really tough to look at. Wow. Failing to implement adequate escalated levels of care when treatments were unsuccessful, especially as she repeatedly solicited Minkoff to respond to her sustained mental anguish, hopelessness, and emerging fatalistic perspective about any form of remedy. A review of Minkoff's records further indicates the signs and symptoms of an acute mental health crisis were also minimized and inadequately addressed over a several-month period. Key risk factors include, so these are risk factors, stresses that create a mental burden, relationship difficulties, symptoms of hyperarousal, and negative thought patterns. And these were evident over a sustained period. And we see that with the text messages. It's so clear. And how we could ignore it, it's just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing. Man. Okay. Significant stressors, the misdiagnosed cancerous cyst, financial problems, significant mental torment, anxiety, depression, mental health issues, interpersonal problems, grief and sadness from the mixed. Yeah, so this misdiagnosed cancerous cyst, I'm not the expert, but it just seems like that would make her mental state so much worse. Like, I'm gonna die anyway. She might have feelings like that. Reduce sleep, worry, and anxiety. And suicide-related negative thoughts. Although arrangements were made, so here's where, Scientology is kind of screwing up also. They had caretakers staying with Whitney Mills, and there's some text messages with these caretakers also where she discusses or brings up the possibility of harming herself. And there's apparently some that feel that once you reach OT8, that maybe you could free yourself of the body. Like maybe that's not as troubling as it would be to anyone else. It's kind of unbelievable, but there were some of those discussions. Dr. Minkoff failed to conduct an appropriate workup. So that sounds familiar, right? That's what the other experts said too. Thanks, Haggis Basher. That's very nice of you. Dr. Minkoff failed to conduct an appropriate workup, which involves creating a list of suspected diseases or differential diagnosis that includes both common and uncommon diseases. This list helps guide the diagnosis process, okay? So if a disease is not included, though, it can't be diagnosed. Among that list of potential diagnoses, it is clear that Minkoff should have included the potential that Whitney Mills was suffering from mental health crisis. You think? And a mental health disorder. Minkoff did not do so, and that failure to properly diagnose or obtain help for Whitney Mills' mental health problems resulted in the death of a patient via suicide, which otherwise could have been prevented had she received appropriate care. She was begging for help with mental health issues, which we clearly see was ignored, other than, I guess, some lithium that was prescribed. Although Minkoff began giving Whitney Mills low-dose lithium, he should have been prescribing her a higher dose. So again, this is an expert. I mean, we would just say like, duh, but this guy is an expert who trained 10,000 clinicians at his medical school. So like, this is the standard of care of the profession. Like, this guy is a profession of psychology. Oh, did he surrender his license? Thank you, Amy. At least no one else will be hurt. Further, Dr. Minkoff should have prescribed a mix of antidepressants, tranquilizers, and serotonin SSRs. So that's something that maybe another expert may agree or not agree with. I don't know. But this is what this expert is saying. And again, this guy is really the whole state of psychology right now. For an ongoing state of distress and psychosis because the treatments that he was using were not working, clearly. And the standard of care required him to escalate this treatment. So that's what this case is all about, though. You have to keep in mind it's the standard of care. What would a reasonable doctor do in the same or similar when you screw up by not even doing what the other doctors would do, by ignoring your patient, by misdiagnosing her as having cancer when she's asking for mental health problems, mental health help, and then you don't even refer her. Those are the things that a medical doctor would do in this situation. That's what these three experts are saying, and that's how we screwed up. And the foreseeable result is going to be, serious harm to Whitney Mills. It is my opinion, with a reasonable degree of professional certainty, that the above described acts of malpractice, again, and malpractice is by what you do, your acts or omissions fall below the standard of care that other doctors would do, that the other doctors would follow. Attributable to Minkoff by and through all of his agents, employers, employees, parent agents, constitute substantial and proximate contributing cause. So that's the thing, when Mrs. O'Leary burned down Chicago because a cow kicked over her lantern, that was not proximate cause because that wasn't foreseeable. But it is foreseeable that someone with mental health crisis, you ignore her or misdiagnose her, you don't get mental health care for her, the foreseeable result is going to be serious harm, and that's exactly what happened. So that is the proximate cause of Whitney Mills' decision to end her life. Okay. So we can skip down to, I think, paragraph 18. To his professional opinion, that there exists reasonable grounds to support a claim of medical negligence. Yeah, okay, I guess I didn't need to go on and on because there he has it in paragraph 18. Okay, so then the affidavit is submitted pursuant to Florida's law. He's a qualified expert. He's been teaching psychology for many years. Way more than 5, but apparently 5 is what gets you to expert status. And then all these folks have their CVs included. So that's so we've got these 3 affidavits, and then just a request for more information. So they're continuing to do some discovery. Good news is there's obviously some discussions between the parties, so hopefully these are real cases. People really died. These cases are so expensive to litigate, though, too. I think most likely the outcome would be that Minkoff's insurer would settle this case based on what looks like some pretty substantial evidence, but we'll see what happens. So the next thing that needs to happen is Scientology needs to file an answer. Well, I think it was common that lithium would be prescribed, but maybe the dosage was too low. Blue-eyed bee. I think that's what the basic assignment of error was. That's how he fell below the standard of care. Maybe he should have increased the dosage in addition to prescribing other medication, was what that expert was saying. So we're looking for Minkoff to file an answer, and also Scientology. They asked for more time. Probably that's not unreasonable. They say, assuming it's true, they say that there's going to be another amended complaint coming out. Yeah, I think it was for mental health issues. I think that's why you would have lithium prescribed, but I'm totally not qualified to guess on that. But I'll just throw out a guess. But my guess is not any better than anyone else's guess. But it looked like because the one expert that really talked about the lithium was the psychologist. So it looks like that the lithium was prescribed for mental health. But the assignment of error, where he fell below the standard of care allegedly, was by not prescribing enough lithium and by not prescribing some other medications that might help in that case. So we'll see what the answers are. If yeah, so his license was suspended in California at one point after Lisa McPherson. So if it's suspended again, that'd be great. But what we're going to look for an answer from Scientology. We're going to look for an answer from surrendered. Yeah, so that's way better. Really appreciate that, Amy. I did not see that. And before I found out about this case, I was just looking at Lisa McPherson, and I filed a 13909 form with the IRS. This is evidence of wrongdoing since 1995. Remember, their tax exemption was restored in 1993, so immediately they began harming people and doing things that were illegal. And evidence of that was Minkoff having his license revoked and then held aside. So just submitting reports on everything that Scientology has done wrong, all evidence of illegal activity. So that's what I have. That's the update right now. Again, this is the Pinellas County Circuit Court in Florida, and you can I don't see the case number here, but I put it in the description of this video. So if you want to follow along, you can just plug in that number, that case number, and then you can check on updates, and you can see all documents have been filed. But we're really early in this case. Only the complaint's been filed, no answer yet. And so once the answer is filed, then they can get into more discovery and, perhaps file some motions to try to get the case the way they want it. But hopefully Minkoff's insurer will just give up. I think they will. This case looks really strong. Oh, Amy, I didn't know you were an RN. Okay. Yeah, great. So anyway, you had some really good info there, so we can try to find out more about why it was surrendered in California. But he's had a long, horrible career, so hopefully just isn't interested in practicing anymore. And I don't know who would want to insure him, a guy with this kind of record. So I guess that's what I have for right now. That's the update on the case. Hopefully everyone's having a good start to the weekend. Hopefully this doesn't bring anyone down, but it's pretty outrageous. And I want to just bring some awareness when we're talking about Scientology and how they view psychiatry. I mean, this is what happens. This is totally what happens when you try to discourage people from getting mental health care. Lisa McPherson asked for mental health care. She, after that accident, there was an interview with the paramedic, and she said that Lisa came over and she said that she was taking off her clothes so that she could get attention because she needed help. And then it was Scientology that took her out of the hospital, and we know what happened after that. But these are two individuals that needed help with mental health care, and Scientology obviously isn't okay with that. So I'm curious to see what Amy is going to come up with for the California license. But this is, thanks, Sophia. This was just, these are 3 documents that were just filed with the court as an exhibit. I was really kind of surprised that we had an opportunity to see this. It doesn't look like these attorneys do a lot of med mal work, but so far they seem to be doing a pretty good job. These affidavits are really conclusory, but these are experts, so that's probably how they get away with it. When I was a young attorney, I had a case against the IRS, and I went and took some affidavits from just witnesses. They weren't experts, they were just fact witnesses, and one of them died before the trial, and then I couldn't use the affidavit because of some conclusory statements. It was really awful. But these are probably going to be okay. But you don't want to model any affidavits you might do on your own. From what you see here, this is the kind of stuff only experts can do because they're experts. So we'll see how they fare. But it looks like LifeWorks, Minkoff, and perhaps this nurse are going to have some serious liability. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good for Scientology to have to go through a trial, and we can follow along with Scientology. Probably some of this would we'd learn a little bit more about these facts because Scientology had there were three Scientologists staying with Whitney Mills and communicating with her. Maybe only been one actually living in her home, but we'll get more of those facts. But it looks like between 1 and 3 were there. But it might be better for the estate not to have to continue to spend a ton of money on stuff like this. These 3 experts, this isn't cheap. I mean, they're spending a lot of money, and it would be nice if they can just get a settlement. They may need it to pursue Scientology in that case, because presumably the law firm is fronting a lot of these expenses, but they'll want their 1/3 cut or whatever the arrangement is. So it may be helpful if there's a settlement against one of these defendants, or Minkoff and the medical group, and then pursue Scientology. Scientology has deep pockets, especially in Florida. Yeah, so that's what we have for right now. I really appreciate everyone's interest. I wasn't sure how interested everyone would be, so I'm glad to see that everyone's as outraged as I am. It's really troubling stuff, and I hope this doesn't bring you down or ruin your weekend. I'm really sorry for Whitney and her family, and what she went through, the way her life ended. It's just, I'm not sure tragic is the right word, but that's what comes to mind right now. So thanks everyone for coming in. I don't know if there's probably some other lives, but I guess I would just send you to sptv.space unless someone knows someone. Oh, Afila, if you've got a question, I'll try to answer it, or maybe someone else can. Amy's a nurse, so she might be the better source. But yeah, what's your question? Yeah, don't forget about Whitney Mills. Her birthday is, her and Lisa McPherson were both born in December. So their birthdays would have been coming up. Both should still be alive and should still be able to enjoy their birthday. Yes. So this case was initially filed versus Scientology. And then the case was amended to include Minkoff and LifeWorks, and so there's multiple defendants. Oh yeah. I mean, when doctors screw up, the consequences are probably going to be pretty tough for the patient. Okay. Well, thanks again for everyone for tuning in, and we'll just keep trying to follow the case. When there's more developments, I'll do a community post or maybe another live. So hope everyone has a good weekend. I hope I didn't bring you down. We'll meet again when there's more of an update to provide. So thank you. Good night.